It's the 6th of April and I'm currently in lockdown in Paris. I can't go out, I can't go to the cafes, the restaurants, I can't even work that much, but I can read books. And if you're in lockdown, I've got a good idea for you. Read some books. And if you're not in lockdown, I've got an idea for you. Read some books, because today I've got 6 of my favourite works of literature. 3 American, 1 Canadian, 1 British, and another British, but the author was born elsewhere. 4 by men, 2 by women, 4 novels, 2 biographies or autobiographies. All of them wonderful. These are books that I love and have moved me or educated me or changed my worldview in one way or another. But at the same time, I've chosen books that you can read even if English is not your first language without searching the dictionary for every other word. Each of these books has literary merit, but the complexity lies in the ideas and the situations and not in the size of its vocabulary. I'll put a link in the description for all the books. By the way, these are affiliate links. However, you can purchase these books at any good bookstore. So without further ado, let's get started with the first book. And it is The Life of Pi by Yann Martel, a Canadian writer, first published in 2001. You might have seen the film version by Ang Lee. The film is excellent, one of the best film adaptations of a book I've seen. However, the book is magnificent. It tells a story of an Indian boy called Piscine Molitor, shortened to Pi, and his father owns a zoo in the city of Pondicherry. And one day he decides to start a new life in Canada with his family and the zoo. Unfortunately, the boat they are travelling in is destroyed in a storm. Pi scrambles to a lifeboat where he is joined by an orangutan, a zebra, and a tiger called Richard Parker. He survives at sea for 227 days. Now, it's a terrific book, crammed full of fantastic descriptions, philosophy. It's moving and it's funny, very, very funny. I must admit that I had this book on my bookshelf for years, and somehow I thought a story about a boy and a tiger on a boat for 227 days, yeah, it's not for me. But one day I picked it up, and I'm so glad I did. It's a wonderful, heartwarming book. It's beautifully written, so don't be put off by the strangeness of its plot, and do give it a try. And I defy you not to get hooked by this book within the first few pages. Now, the level would be upper intermediate onwards. I think at that level you can handle it. Okay, and here's a taste from the first page of the novel. I had been to India before, in the north, for 5 months. On that first trip, I had come to the subcontinent completely unprepared. Actually, I had a preparation of 1 word. When I told a friend who knew the country well of my travel plans, he said casually, "They speak a funny English in India. They like words like bamboozle." I remembered his words as my plane started its descent towards Delhi. So the word bamboozle was my one preparation for the rich, noisy, functioning madness of India. I used the word on occasion, and truth be told, it served me well. To a clerk at a train station, I said, "I didn't think the fare would be so expensive. You're not trying to bamboozle me, are you?" He smiled and chanted, "No, sir, there is no bamboozlement here. I have quoted you the correct fare." The next book is The Secret History by Donna Tartt, an American writer, and it's first published in 1992. It's a story of an elite group of students of classical Greek and their charismatic professor and the friendships between them. Then the tale takes a darker turn, and we hear of murder and blackmail and cover-up and more. And the story is so good, you just can't stop reading. And it's a really beautifully crafted novel, and it holds your attention from beginning to end. And it's just so entertaining. I'm not generally a fan of thrillers, but this book elevates the genre to a whole different level. And I can't imagine anybody not enjoying this book. It's well written, it's compelling and engaging. So if you're looking for a mystery novel with literary merit, then this is for you. And you can tackle this book at intermediate level. Okay, it's a nicely crafted novel, but the writing style is always approachable. Okay, and here's the opening. The snow in the mountains was melting, and Bunny had been dead for several weeks before we came to understand the gravity of our situation. And the next book is Hand to Mouth by Paul Auster, first published in 1997. And it's the first of 2 autobiographies. I love this book. It's a story of epic failure. Before Paul Auster became a published writer, everything he did, certainly in a professional sense, failed. He tried his hand at numerous jobs without success. He lived in Paris for, I think, 3 years, and he worked for a time as a lowly paid translator. He even spent one of his life developing a card game based on baseball, and the card game is actually included in the book. But like everything else, it failed miserably. It's full of humour and bizarre adventures, but it's a tale with a happy ending. Spoiler alert, in the end he gets his book published, and now he's a very successful author. I'm sure you know him. I like these stories of redemption, and Hand to Mouth won't disappoint, even if you haven't read any other books by Paul Auster, and I encourage you to do so. You'll like this book, and you can read it even at an intermediate level. It's a challenge, but you can do it. By the way, if you're not familiar with the expression hand to mouth, it means you only just have enough money to live. And here's the first paragraph from the book. In my late 20s and early 30s, I went through a period of several years when everything I touched turned to failure. My marriage ended in divorce. My work as a writer foundered, and I was overwhelmed by money problems. I'm not just talking about an occasional shortfall or some periodic belt tightenings, but a constant, grinding, almost suffocating lack of money that poisoned my soul and kept me in a state of never-ending panic. And next we have A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole, written in 1963 but published posthumously in 1980. Wow, what a masterpiece. And the story of how this book got published is as intriguing and as tragic as the book itself. Now, Toole killed himself at the age of 31 in 1969. His mother found a smeared copy of the book amongst Toole's possessions, and then she took it from publisher to publisher, but it was rejected by 7 different publishers. She finally called repeatedly this guy called Walker Percy at Loyola University in New Orleans, and in the foreword to the book, this is what he wrote. The lady was persistent, and it somehow came to pass that she stood in my office handing me the hefty manuscript. There was no getting out of it. Only one hope remained, that I could read a few pages and they would be bad enough for me, in good conscience, to read no farther. Usually I can do just that. Indeed, the first paragraph often suffices. My only fear was that this one might not be bad enough, or might be just good enough so that I would have to keep reading. In this case, I read on and on. First with the sinking feeling that it was not bad enough to quit, then with a prickle of interest, then a growing excitement, and finally an incredulity. Surely it was not possible that it was so good. So the book finally got published in 1980, and it became a sensation, winning the Pulitzer Prize. What I don't understand is how it is possible that this book got rejected by so many publishers. From the first paragraph, you know it's great and you can't stop reading. It tells a story of Ignatius J. Riley, 30 years old, living with his mother. He's brilliant, creative, romantic, but weird, really weird. And this is the story of his adventures, or rather misadventures, in his hometown of New Orleans. It's so funny and beautifully written, and it's just so sad that we didn't get to see more books from this great writer. The book is for advanced readers. Okay, there is a little New Orleans slang in it, but you'll manage once you get used to it. But certainly the writing style is more elaborate than the other books I've recommended here. But if you think you can tackle it, then do try. It's worth the effort. By the way, you might ask, why has there never been a film made of this book? Well, like the book, the making of the film has been shrouded with tragedy. A film was planned in 1982 with John Belushi and Richard Pryor, both of whom died before production. There was a plan to make a film starring John Candy, but he died. Then another movie project with Chris Farley, but he died too. Director John Waters was interested in turning into a movie starring Divine, and guess what? Divine died too. And Steven Soderbergh planned a movie in 2005, but yet again the project was beset by tragedy, including the murder of the head of the Louisiana State Film Commission and the devastation caused by Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. In 2013, Steven Soderbergh remarked, "I think it's cursed. I'm not prone to superstition, but that project has got bad mojo on it." And the next book is Graham Greene, Our Man in Havana, first published in 1958. Now, when you think of Graham Greene, you don't really think of comedies, but this is a very funny book. It's a black comedy set in Cuba before the revolution and during the Batista regime. James Wormold is a single father who sells vacuum cleaners, and he has a 16-year-old daughter with expensive tastes. He doesn't earn much money as a vacuum cleaner salesman, but then he meets Hawthorne, who recruits him into MI6 as a British spy. The trouble is, he doesn't have any secret information to send them. Fearing he'll be fired, he sends sketches for a new vacuum cleaner and tells them that it's a military installation. And so it goes on, and he gets deeper and deeper into the world of espionage. Now, I'm a fan of Graham Greene, and perhaps some of his other books, such as The Quiet American and The Power and the Glory, have had a greater literary impact. But this book, which has a backdrop of depravity of the Batista regime, is really interesting. It touches on satire, but it's more about poking fun at Britishness and the Secret Service at a time before the invention of James Bond. And it is, above all, a really entertaining book. And here's a quote from the book talking about Havana. "It was a city to visit, not a city to live in, but it was the city where Wormold had first fallen in love, and he was held to it as though to the scene of a disaster. Time gives poetry to a battlefield." And the next book is, well, I have it here. It's the only book that I actually have at the moment in this apartment, and it's Wild Swans by Yung Chang. And it tells the story of 3 generations of a female family. Chang's grandmother, her mother, and herself. And each led An extraordinary life with a backdrop of history, politics, and the culture of China. And it's a fascinating read. Chang's grandmother, who had bound feet from the age of 2, which made it extremely painful for her to walk, became a concubine of a warlord. Chang's mother worked for the Communist Party during the revolution, and Chang herself tells of her suffering during the Cultural Revolution before leaving China in 1978. And she eventually became the first national of the People's Republic of China to obtain a doctorate from a British university. And this book illuminates the rich tapestry of Chinese history in the 20th century. But it's not a dry history book. It tells a story, and it tells it so well. I do highly recommend this book. It's a work of literature that is both informative and it grabs you on an emotional level, and I think that's rare. You can read this with an intermediate level. It's a challenge, but you can do it. The most challenging thing actually is remembering all the names and the dates and the events that are happening at breakneck speed throughout this extraordinary book. Here's a snippet for you from the first page. At the age of 15, my grandmother became the concubine of a warlord general, the police chief of a tenuous national government in China. The year was 1924 and China was in chaos. Much of it, including Manchuria, where my grandmother lived, was ruled by warlords. The liaison was arranged by her father, a police official in the provincial town of Yixian in southwest Manchuria, about 100 miles north of the Great Wall and 250 miles northeast of Beijing. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope too that you're going to try reading some of those marvellous books. And if you do have any book recommendations of your own, then we'd love to hear them. Put them in the comments. Stay healthy. Bye.